Hey everyone, CPO here, and in this video I'm going to be going through the installation of the splitter V1 from Maxton Designs on my 2024 Kia EV6 GT. The first thing I'm going to do is lift up the vehicle, and I recommend you do this if you can. I've seen people try and do splitter installs on these cars with them on the ground, and while it can be done, there is something to be said for getting a few extra inches of room to really get under there and see what you're doing. And I'll show you exactly why that becomes important in this installation. Now, do know I am using jack stands on both sides. I am leaving the jack in place on the driver's side, but I want you to know I am putting a jack stand under there. So don't crawl under there with just a jack. Trust me, you don't want to do that. All right, so here is the splitter as it comes. It's a one-piece design, and it's going to have to be bolted to the underside of the front bumper. There is a version 1 and a version 2, and there's some subtle style differences, but I think I like the version 1 better, which is why I got it. It does come with a small hardware kit and some instructions that are very generic. So first thing I want to do is just get a quick feel for how it's going to fit underneath the vehicle, and it sort of like falls into place the way it's molded. So now I'm going to get under there and start making room to work. So what I'm doing is removing these clips that hold the underlying insulation panel to the front bumper cover. And these are really easy to remove. You just basically pull down on the tab. You can use a trim tool like this or even a flathead screwdriver. You just want to separate that, and that allows them to pop out freely. Otherwise, you push them in to lock them into place. Pretty simple. I'm sure if you've worked on vehicles at all, you've seen plenty of those. Now I'm really going to get under there and take a look at how this is going to fit underneath the car, understand what I'm using for alignment. And the way this product is molded, it does sort of naturally fall into position. It's kind of hard to explain, but there is a point that it settles into. So feeling good that I'm going to get this thing installed properly, I'm going to go ahead and remove this top film. You want to do this before you install it because you're going to bolt it to the car and it'll be impossible to get this off once you bolt it to the car. But you do want to do a test fit first to make sure it's going to fit in case you got to return it or something like that. Now I'm using a jack with a little rubber block to hold the splitter in place while I get the initial alignment, and that holds the middle up. And then what I'm doing is just wrapping some masking tape around the sides, the wings of this thing, and just using tape on the car to hold them up in place. This allows me to get under the car and really sort of get a feel for exactly where the placement's going to be without also trying to hold it up into place. Then what I'm doing is looking at where things are going to line up, and I'm looking at both sides here, and as it turns out, this is designed to fit basically flush against the existing bumper cover. You can see the lip of the bumper and the back edge of the splitter pretty much line up, which makes it kind of easy. Yep, there you go, right there you can see that. So the other thing I'm doing is looking at the edges to make sure that they're equal on both sides. And once I feel like I've got it in place, I'm going to use these little plastic alligator clips to hold everything in place. This will allow me to take away the jack that's holding it up in the middle, and the whole thing won't fall apart. And we'll also hold it in place while I drill holes. So I have a bunch of these. I think I get them from Harbor Freight or Home Depot or wherever, but these are super handy to have around. So like I said, I've got a ton of them in various sizes. I'm just using a handful of them here to hold this into position. All right, now I've got it there. I can remove the jack, and you can see it's basically being held up in the front by that masking tape, and then underneath the backside by those clips. Again, I'm double checking fitment. You've heard measure twice, cut once. It's the same thing. Align twice, drill once. Like, I want to make sure everything's lined up. I'm looking for that logo on the splitter to be on the center line. I'm looking for how these points line up on the edges and making sure everything is consistent from side to side, making sure all my gaps are the same, making sure that the back edge of the splitter by the wheel well looks the same. Now, the other thing I'm doing here is looking at where I want to put my holes underneath to put the bolts. Now, the instruction manual says that the hole should be no more than 30 millimeters from the front edge where it basically meets the bumper, right? So I've got a caliper here and I set it for 30 millimeters and I'm looking for where I want to put those bolt holes. And it's a little bit awkward because there's a lot of stuff in there that you have to navigate around. So I'll show you a look inside of that here in a little bit, but I'm really doing a combination of looking and feeling where I want to put these holes. I'm using a little Sharpie. This is a silver Sharpie, so it shows up on the bottom of the black splitter, but I'm using a Sharpie to make some marks to figure out exactly where I want to do things. And yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to plan out my holes in the front of the splitter. And once I get it all installed, I'll show you exactly where everything ended up. So I'm using a really small drill bit for the first pilot hole, holding the layers of the bumper and the bumper cover and the splitter together so it doesn't separate when I drill. Looking to make sure I know where the drill bit is coming up through. And I'm using a combination of that and feeling. Don't drill into your hand, please. That would be bad. And then once I've done that, I'm going to go to a hole that is the size of the bolt. These are 6 millimeter bolts, I believe. Double check though. I don't want to tell you a size drill bit if the hardware changes down the road. Get a drill bit that is exactly the size of your bolt hole. Once you've got that done, you can go in and use the bolt and washers and the lock nut. Now the kit comes with enough washers for one for each bolt. I wanted to use 2 washers per bolt, so I actually went and bought some additional washers. I wanted a washer on the top side, which is, you know, the inside of the bumper, and I wanted one on the bottom side. And so, yeah, I'm using more washers than came with the kit. It just is what it is. That's a personal preference thing. So I have bolt, washer, and then going through, and then another washer, and then the lock nut. And you can see in here all the stuff that is in there underneath. So you've got to try and find a way to drill around that. And that's why I think it's important to get underneath the car and be able to look up inside of there and not feel too cramped. So the bolts right in the middle are sort of the hardest to navigate because, again, all that stuff that's in there, that structure that you're trying to work around. But then it gets easier as you get out to the sides. So I'm going to show you here in a second where I ended up putting all of the bolt holes. And then as I go on the side, I'm putting 3 holes along the side of the splitter with the one as far back as I can get. That's probably one of the tougher ones to get to because you got to put the nut and the washer on the inside. It was a little bit tougher to get through there, but be patient, you can do it. I actually separated out the bumper a little bit more and sort of pulled it away so I could get the nut inside there, but I wanted to have that secure at the very tip. I think those are the 2 most important places to get secured. The very ends and then the front where all of that pressure is going to be pulling downwards because of the air forces. Not the Air Force, like as in Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, but the air forces as in, you know, aero force. Anyway, once I've got it all installed, I can go ahead and put those clips back in to hold that insulation panel that runs across the front of the car. And then I can remove my stickers off the bottom of the splitter and no longer need all of that information. I did leave the genuine Maxton Design sticker there. And here you can see where I ended up with my bolt holes. I have a couple of test holes and a couple of marks I didn't use. So I've got 4 directly in the middle on either side of that the logo area. 2 more right in the corner where the point is, and then 3 as it wraps around the side. And it's the same exactly on the other side. And that is a very secure placement. Can be removed and you wouldn't have any external visible signs from on top of the car. If you crawled underneath, you'd obviously see bolt holes, but you wouldn't see that if you remove the splitter from the top, normal view. So that's it. That's the splitter install. It's not a difficult install. Just take your time on the prep and the alignment, because once you start drilling holes, that's when it really matters. So I think it looks super nice. It does give a little bit more of an aggressive look. The splitter extends about 2.5 inches, I'd say, which means you have to be careful when you're parking now, because you've got 2.5 inches extra length there to run into curbs. And it's just slightly lower, not lower by a lot, but slightly lower. You can see the factory, I'll call it splitter, but the factory black piece on top of the splitter. Right there, it shows you how much extended it is. But again, like I said, it just adds a little bit more of an aggressive look. And yeah, I think it's pretty nice. Anyway, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.